Oh yes, a very good morning. We're glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. We are now into the Tech Note segment of the program. Of course, having heard from the officials from KCCA about Kampala's air quality. But Kampala is a city that continues to grapple with so much, just like the rest of the country. Before I introduce my guest for the Tech Note segment, where we shall be addressing modalities to getting a driving license, let me just take you through a preamble. In 2022, over 4,500 lives were lost in road crashes, and this was mainly attributed to unskilled drivers. That's according to the statistics, and that one has to first enroll with the security printing company to get a driving license in order to be able to get the certificate that enables them to again get to the police department, that is called the Police Inspectorate of Vehicles, or IOV. After that, you get certified that you are able to be on the road. It now means that most of the people who are driving cars on the road are not actually certified or designated to be able to be on the road, and that could be the problem in as far as the many accidents and the mayhem is concerned. This morning we have Karim Chibuka, the motor vehicle inspection head at the Ministry of Works and Transport. He's going to be speaking to us about the latest modalities in getting a driving license, what it means to have a driving license, and what kind of driving license you ought to have, especially in light of the existing framework. A very good morning, Mr. Chibuka.
Yes, good morning to you and good morning to our viewers.
Welcome to Morning at NTV. Before we begin to talk the nitty-gritty of driving license, the motor vehicle inspection section of the Ministry of Works and Transport must be dealing with a lot. Personally, if you are driving around the city, there are so many cars. That means we have so many motorists in the country. First, take us through the latest data and statistics with regard to number of vehicles and also registered or known certified motorists.
First of all, thank you, and I bring you greetings from the ministry. Yes, the data on motor vehicles currently we have stands around 1.9 million vehicles, and these include the tricycles, motorcycles and quadricycles, about 1.2 million, and then the rest about 700,000. Those are the normal vehicles which you normally use. Those are statistics which we have currently for motor vehicles in the country. A
population of 42 million, we have less than 3 million motor vehicles.
3 million vehicles, precisely, if you can.
Juxtaposing it with what's happening across the region and in continent or even the world, does that mean we need to purchase a lot more vehicles to drive economic growth?
No, not necessarily. You don't need to have the numbers, but all what you need to have is an optimal number, which is sufficient to achieve the economic growth. So the numbers are not the issue, but the optimal number to achieve the economic development in the country.
Okay.
In fact, we are looking at even reducing those numbers and encourage mass transportation by way of maybe mass carriers like buses and also rail transport, and also shift also some of the transport from the road to the water section.
Water section.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Could be able to travel through Kamuli and get to the other part of the country without necessarily crossing the Domo highways. All right. Talking about the regime for licensing of motorists in the country, again, you're going to have to reveal some statistics. How many are licensed, and what does the data capture?
Yeah, we have to have like a database of about between 600 and 750 licensed drivers, but that's a database.
Is that 1,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
700,000.
Yes, but you see, I talked about the number of motor vehicles. in the country has about close to 700. It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone is to have a driving license, they have a vehicle. I can be having a driving license, but preparing to drive a vehicle for someone else.
You could also be a driver, employed to be able to drive trucks.
So not necessarily that if you have a driving license, you have a vehicle. So those are statistics which we currently have at the moment.
Okay. Yes. Now that's just surface area knowledge. Yes. Let's go into the nitty-gritty. The driver's license status.
First of all, the driving license, it is a document or a legal document which permits anybody to drive a motor vehicle on the road. Without a driving license, you cannot drive a motor vehicle, any kind of motor vehicle on the road. And by a motor vehicle under the Traffic and Road Safety Act 1998 as amended in 2000. By the way, we amended the Traffic and Road Safety Act in 2000, and that's where we introduced these provisions. So motor vehicle includes also the motorcycles, quadricycles, and all these categories of vehicles.
These quadricycles are the ones that you usually see boys riding sodas.
So for anyone to drive a motor vehicle on the road, you must be having a driving license, and it must be valid. And there are procedures for getting a driving license. We will be delving into them maybe as we go on. But largely from the legal framework under which they are issued, that is under Section 42 of the Traffic and Road Safety Act as amended in 2000.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is the rollout of the categories for the driving license?
Yes, initially we had before we amended the Act, in 2000, we had about 12 categories of driving licenses. Some of them, we dropped them, and then we introduced new ones when we amended the Act in the year 2000, of course, to align with the international standards. And by international standards, I mean here the Vienna Convention on Road Traffic of 1968, and also the TTFP standards. TTFP, maybe for purposes of our viewers, mean the Tripartite Transport and Transit Facilitation Program. This is a program where 3 regional economic communities of East Africa, SADC and COMESA, came together to develop and implement uniform or harmonized transport policies, laws, regulations, and standards to facilitate transport or to facilitate trade, for that matter. So this is where the driving license comes in, as we amended the Act to ensure that we harmonize the driving license and align to international standards. International standards in such a way that if one driver from Uganda has a driving license, he can go all the way to South Africa, and the South African police can interpret the driving license because we are using uniform standards. That is under the TTFP standards.
And how far is that? Is it actually feasible that right now anybody can drive, or we still have issues?
It's when you have countries like maybe under regional economic communities, you agree on the implementation of some standards. Some countries are slow to implement, others are faster. Now, for us in Uganda, we are faster. We implemented and harmonized these standards on driving licenses, introduced them in 2000. So it's upon now other countries to recognize what we implemented, because it is in line with what we agreed upon as regional standards.
And what is the obstacle then for the other countries? What information or feedback do we get on why they have not been able to roll out the modalities as fast as Uganda has done?
First of all, the institutional setup and maybe priorities differ. Maybe for them, they could be preferring to do other things first and then do this later. So it's all about the planning and prioritization of other institutions in those respective countries.
Okay. Yes. So right now, what you're saying is, if Uganda has already adopted the modalities, but they haven't been adopted in other countries, a Ugandan who seeks, for example, to drive through Kenya, Tanzania, and then go downwards, can't actually do that right now.
No, they can do it because
under what modalities?
yes, because the standards are already there, recognized, and they were assented to by the respective heads of states in those countries. So they are obliged to recognize our driving license internationally.
Okay. So that means a license that allows you to drive cross-border is but just one of the categories.
Yes, just one of the categories.
Okay, let's roll out the rest of the categories so that our viewers out there can understand exactly.
So now, initially, before we amended the Act, we had Class A. Class A, that was allowing someone to drive motorcycles, tricycles, and quadricycles.
That's right.
And it was bundled together, and it was not even separating the different categories of those motorcycles, tricycles, and quadricycles. But then that was causing confusion, as we saw, because somebody would train and get on that class, but they could operate different categories of motor.
Other heavier trucks.
Yeah, not heavier trucks, but heavier motorcycles, and then tricycles, and also quadricycles. So we subdivided that class into 3 categories. So we have category A1, to mean which is for riders of motorcycles below 125 cc. Those are small motorcycles. That is where most of our border cyclists are. And then we have A, which we retain under the old category, to mean for the motorcyclists, which for motorcycles which are above 125. Those are motorcycles which are like maybe big in size. Because the problem which we had at first is like somebody would train to ride a motorcycle maybe on a Bajaj or
the normal border,
and then they end up riding these bigger motorcycles of about 200 cc. You take motorcycle to the beach, you know, these big ones, but they have not trained properly on how to operate those motorcycles. So we introduced also class B1 for quadricycles and tricycles, because we didn't have that category before. Yes.
Okay. Now for the mainstream vehicles. For the mainstream and trucks.
For the mainstream vehicles, maybe the car you probably drive, and maybe the one I drive. Those are motor cars, station wagons. And the class under which they fall is Group B motor vehicles. Those are vehicles which are below 3.5 tons. And when you have such a vehicle, you can carry, it is limited up to passengers, number of people up to 7. You don't exceed that. So it is below 3.5 tons, but also the passenger capacity, the number of people you can carry in such vehicles is below 8 passengers. So we also introduced a subcategory, but under that vehicle, Group B, which we introduced something new, is you can couple or attach a small trailer on that vehicle. You know, maybe if you are going to the beach or
a caravan truck.
You can attach it, but as long as it is not above 750 kilograms, you can carry it. You can attach it to your vehicle and then carry it. Okay, and then there's another class which we introduced there under that category, that is BE. This is the same categorization, 3.5 tons below, and then below also 80 passengers. But this one you can attach a slightly bigger trailer, which is above 750 kg.
Okay.
Yes. So that the new categorizations
750. That's close to a ton.
Yeah, that's close to a ton.
And under what category does the full ton or more than that fall?
I'll come again.
The heavy transport vehicles.
That one, heavy transport vehicles. Now those one will go now into goods vehicles. Those are other categories. Maybe we can go into them.
Yeah, please do, because many of the ones we see on the road are usually a bit of troublemakers, and the traffic might be grappling with many of them. They should understand when and who should be on the road. Yeah.
Okay, previously under the heavy goods vehicles, we had the 2 groups of motor vehicles, that is the CM and the CH. So CM was permitting drivers to drive motor vehicles from 3.5 tons up to 22.5 tons. But then there was a problem because someone would learn to drive a motor vehicle maybe on a vehicle of about 3.5 tons or 4 tons, but they end up being licensed to drive bigger motor vehicles of about 18 tons, 20 tons, because the range was too high. So we subdivided that category of CM and introduced about 3 classes in them. That is, the new class which we introduced is Class C. That is, permits a driver to drive motor vehicles above 3.5 tons. Okay. Yes, but under such vehicles, you may attach a trailer which does not exceed the 750 kilogram. But these are kind of rigid trucks above 3.5 tons, but the maximum limit is not stated because we have axle load regulations which limit now the maximum number, the maximum tonnage of load which such a vehicle can carry. So the maximum load is limited by axle load limitations. Yes, the number of axles which a vehicle has.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to stay on the heavy transport and the ones that have more axles, because they do cross-border trade, the transport, and that could well work within the modalities of the established framework that you talked about, that allows for cross-border driving. How harmonized is that? Because trailers coming, say, from Mombasa and then through Malaba or Busia, and then again going into Katuna to Rwanda or even South Sudan.
No, of course, under the axle load regulations, the maximum number of axles are regulated, and in the region that is standardized. So we all have to follow the common standards. There's no confusion because there are regulations, regional regulations and standards which prescribe the maximum number of axles which those heavy vehicles must have for each category. Yes, but going back to the categories of driving license, because that is C. Now we have C1. C1, those are vehicles, that class permits a driver to operate a goods vehicle above 3.5 tons, but does not exceed 7.5 tons. That is C1. Okay. Then we have C1E. Remember, we have subdivided CM into C, C1, and C1E. The CM, which we had before, which permitting a driver to drive motor vehicles between 3.5 tons to 22.5 tons. Now we subdivided it into 3 classes. That is C, C1, which I have just explained, from 3.5 tons to 7.5 tons, and then C1E. C1E, okay, vehicles above 3.5 tons, but does not exceed 7.5 tons, but one can attach a trailer which does not exceed 12 tons. Okay. Yes, that is the category of C, M, which we subdivided into C, C1, and then C1E. Yes. Then we had another category of CH under goods vehicles. Under that, we have CE as the new category. So instead of CH, the previous class, then we have right now CE. That one permits a driver to drive goods vehicles between 3.5 tons and above. There is no limit, but you can attach a trailer also, which is above 750 kg. Again, the limit is as per the axle load. Yes.
Okay. Now, acquisition of these licenses across board must have a support system, especially.
Yes, they must be having a support system, but there are also the other categories which I have not explained. Maybe
please
for passenger service vehicles.
Let's finish them and then we can talk about
service
the
vehicles, because previously for passenger service vehicles we had 2 classes again. That is DL, permitting a driver to drive vehicles carrying passengers from 8 up to 22 passengers. And then also we had the class C, DM, permitting a driver to drive passenger service vehicles up to 60 passengers. Those are all the classes. And then we had another class, DH, which was permitting a driver to operate passenger service vehicles above 60 passengers. But now we subdivided them and then introduced new classes, that is D1, permitting a driver to operate motor vehicles carrying passengers from 8 up to 16. Instead of from 8 up to 22, we reduced them. Then Class D, permitting a driver to operate a passenger service vehicle from 8 passengers up to 30 passengers, Class D. And then Class DE, permitting a driver to operate a passenger service vehicle from 8 passengers and above.
Okay.
Yes.
Before,
so there's no limit. That is a heavy now passenger service vehicle like a buses.
Okay.
Yes.
When it comes to training of drivers, that means there's a whole list of categories, especially when it comes to training. But we know that there are some who go to train simply to be able to drive.
Yes.
And does the system, especially at IOV, capture what kind of vehicle one intends to drive, and how does the monitoring process roll out? Can I say, for example, I'm here to train, I want to train, this is the kind of vehicle I'm going to be driving, or I intend to drive, or it is pretty much laissez-faire. I'm here, I want to learn how to drive.
First of all, there are prescribed requirements for one to get a driving license, and like you have put it rightly, training is among them. So the ministry has licensed driving schools which are permitted to undertake training of learner drivers for the different categories of motor vehicles.
Okay.
So before a learner driver gets a license, they have to undergo training in a licensed driving school. And that licensed driving school, they are licensed to undertake training for specific categories of motor vehicles. So the monitoring, first of all, is done at the level of licensing, because a driving school cannot also be licensed to train drivers for particular categories of motor vehicles when they don't have the facilities and the equipment to do so. So after the training, the driver is issued a certificate of completion of training to confirm that they have been trained for a specific period of time in that driving school, and also that they are competent to go and do a driving test. So they go and driving, they present that certificate of compliance or certificate of completion of training rather to the IOV, and the IOV will confirm that actually this driver was trained by a driving school for this particular category of motor vehicle, and then the testing is done from there accordingly.
Engineer Chibuka Karim, we shall be shortly going to Lugogo, where there is a tax dialogue that is ensured to enhance growth of business related aspects, especially when it comes to transformation of the economy. I'll give you the last word and talk about the price very quickly before we can go to Stephen Mbidi.
Yes, the prices for driving licenses are categorized into 1, 3, and 5 years, because we introduced the driving license for 5 years, by the way, when we made the amendments in 2000. Yeah, so if you want to get a driving license for 1 year, then you have to pay 135,000 for the first time. For the first time? Yes. And then if you want to get a driving license for 3 years, they have to pay 100. For 3 years, you have to pay 230,000. Yes, for the first time, and then when you are renewing, it's 210,000. Okay. Yes, but for 1 year, when you are renewing, it's 130. First time is 135,000. If you want to get a driving license for 5 years, you have to pay 230,000, and then 210,000 when you are renewing. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Engineer. But they also, if you are a beginner, you also have to pay the learner driving license, which is 60,000. 60,000. Yes, it permits you to learn how to drive on the road from a driving school. All right.